The silence came without warning on March 15th, 2387 at exactly 14:33 Galactic Standard Time. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Frontier, watching her communication screens go dark one by one, every human colony. Every space station, every ship in the vast network of human civilization simply stopped responding. No distress calls, no emergency signals, no vital messages. Just emptiness where millions of voices had been moments before. Lisa pressed her hand against the cold metal console and felt her heart racing. She had been commanding deep space surveys in the Outer Rim for 3 years, far from the political tensions that had been building between humanity and the Galactic Council. Her crew of 47 humans had been mapping new star systems, completely unaware that their entire species was about to vanish from known space. "Captain, I'm getting nothing from Earth," reported Lieutenant Nina Ross from the communications station. Her voice carried a tremor that Lisa had never heard before. Nina had been trying to reach home for 6 hours straight, cycling through every frequency and protocol in their database. No response from Mars Colony, Luna Base, or any of the outer settlements. It's like they just stopped existing. Dr. Amy Chen looked up from her science station with wide eyes. She had been humanity's leading expert on alien biology before joining the New Frontiers exploration mission. "The quantum signatures are all wrong," she said, her fingers dancing across holographic displays. "I'm detecting residual energy patterns that don't match any known human technology. These readings suggest some kind of massive dimensional manipulation occurred simultaneously across hundreds of systems." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Lisa felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders like a physical force. Somewhere in the galaxy, the 3 species of the Galactic Council were probably celebrating what they assumed was humanity's final retreat from galactic politics. The insectoid Vexhi, the crystalline Zethkar, and the amphibious Morden had been growing increasingly hostile toward human expansion for decades. Commander Jake Morrison had been humanity's last official representative at the Council station orbiting Kepler 442b. Lisa remembered his final report 3 weeks ago, warning that the Council was preparing to impose strict sanctions on human space. The alien species wanted to limit human terraforming rights and force compliance through economic pressure. Jake had been negotiating desperately, trying to find a peaceful solution that would allow humanity to continue expanding without triggering an interstellar war. "Set course for Proxima Centauri," Lisa ordered. "If anyone survived this, they'll head for the research stations." The New Frontier's engines hummed to life, propelling them through hyperspace toward what had once been humanity's most advanced scientific outpost. Lisa hoped they would find answers there, or at least other survivors who could help her understand what had happened to their species. The journey took 18 hours, during which Lisa's crew worked frantically to analyze the data they had collected. Engineer Kate Sullivan discovered that the energy signatures detected at the moment of disappearance showed characteristics of both quantum tunneling and dimensional manipulation. "It's like someone opened doorways to another universe," Kate explained, her voice filled with scientific excitement despite the dire circumstances. The power requirements would be enormous, but theoretically possible with advanced enough technology. When they arrived at Proxima Centauri b, they found the research station intact but completely abandoned. The facility's automated systems were still running, maintaining perfect environmental conditions for inhabitants who were no longer there. Dr. Chun led a team aboard the station while Lisa remained on the bridge, coordinating with other departments. "Captain, you need to see this." Amy's voice crackled through the comm system. "I'm in the main laboratory, and there are signs of recent modifications to the station's power grid. Someone installed massive energy conduits that run deep underground. These modifications are sophisticated and would have taken months to complete." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying the humans here knew this was coming?" "It looks that way," Amy replied. "The energy readings I'm detecting suggest they were preparing for some kind of massive transportation event. But the scale of what I'm seeing here It would have required coordination across every human settlement in the galaxy. As Lisa processed this information, Lieutenant Ross called out from her station, "Captain, I'm intercepting alien communications. The Vexhai are reporting missing colonies in their outer territories. Several systems have gone completely dark, just like our settlements." "How many systems?" Lisa asked, feeling her stomach tighten. 17 confirmed so far, with more reports coming in every hour, Nina replied. "The pattern is moving inward toward their core worlds. Whatever happened to us, it's happening to them too." Dr. Chun's team continued their investigation of the research station, discovering more evidence of secret preparations. Hidden computer files revealed that human scientists had been working on something called Project Exodus for nearly a century. The files were heavily encrypted, but the fragments Amy could decode suggested that humanity had been developing technology to relocate entire populations across dimensional barriers. They weren't running away, Lisa realized as she studied the data. They were preparing for war. High Arbiter Velther of the Zethkar had dismissed human concerns for decades, believing that economic pressure would force humanity to accept limitations on their expansion. The crystalline being had led the Council's efforts to contain what they saw as human aggression, never imagining that humanity might have other options besides submission or conventional warfare. Lisa stared out at the stars surrounding Proxima Centauri and wondered where her species had gone. The evidence suggested they had transported themselves to a parallel dimension or pocket universe, from which they could observe the normal universe without being detected. If that was true, then humanity hadn't abandoned the galaxy at all. They had positioned themselves to strike back at their enemies while remaining completely untouchable. "Captain," Nina called out, her voice tight with fear. "I'm receiving reports from deep space monitoring stations. 3 more Vexhai colonies have vanished in the past hour. Whatever the humans are doing, they're not done yet." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to imagine the scope of what humanity had accomplished. Moving billions of people across dimensional barriers without leaving any trace required technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. It also required planning and coordination that suggested humanity had been preparing for this moment for generations. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that economic pressure would force humanity to submit to their will, never considering that humans might have other options. Now, the 3 alien species were beginning to pay the price for their arrogance, and Lisa suspected that the blood price had only just begun. 6 months had passed since humanity vanished from the galaxy, and the effects were spreading like poison through the veins of galactic civilization. Captain Lisa Hayes watched from the bridge of the New Frontier as another trade convoy limped past them, its cargo holds nearly empty and its escort ships showing signs of poor maintenance. The galactic economy was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Parker had warned about this exact scenario in classified reports that he had submitted to both human and Council authorities 2 years before the Exodus. Ben had served in human intelligence for 15 years, analyzing the economic interdependencies that held the galaxy together. His reports had painted a clear picture. Humanity's sudden removal from the galactic economy would trigger cascading failures that would cripple all 3 Council species within months. The Council had dismissed Ben's warnings as human propaganda, refusing to believe that their advanced civilizations could be so dependent on a single species. Now they were discovering the truth in the most painful way possible. Human industrial capacity had accounted for nearly 40% of galactic manufacturing, and their disappearance had created supply shortages that touched every aspect of alien daily life. Dr. Amy Chun stood in the abandoned mining facility on Kepler 438c, studying modifications that human engineers had made in the months before their disappearance. The changes were subtle but extensive, with massive energy conduits running deep underground like the roots of some enormous mechanical tree. Amy ran her scanner over the walls and felt her breath catch as she realized what she was looking at. "These aren't just power cables," she reported to Lisa over the comlink. "Someone has turned this entire mining operation into a weapon system." The energy output capacity is enormous, enough to power a planetary defense grid or something even larger. Engineer Kate Sullivan knelt beside one of the conduits. Her tools spread around her as she worked to understand the human modifications. Kate had helped design similar systems during her time with the Colonial Engineering Corps, but she had never seen anything on this scale. Captain, these modifications would have taken at least 6 months to complete. The humans here were working around the clock, installing equipment while maintaining the pretense of normal mining operations. Lisa felt a growing sense of unease as she listened to her team's reports. The evidence was building a picture of systematic preparation that stretched across the entire human domain. While the Council had been debating sanctions and economic pressure, humanity had been quietly preparing for something far more drastic than anyone had imagined. The Vexi. Hive Mother Zixandra transmitted her latest report to the Galactic Council with clicking mandibles that betrayed her growing panic. The insectoid leader had ruled over 3 billion of her species in the Terminus sector, a cluster of 12-star systems that served as the Vexi-S primary industrial base. Now those systems were simply gone, leaving behind empty space where thriving worlds had orbited their stars just days before. No debris, no radiation signatures, no signs of conventional weapons. Zixandra's translator converted her chemical communications into standard galactic speech. Long-range sensors detect only vacuum where our colonies should be. This technology is beyond anything we have encountered in 10,000 years of galactic history. High Arbiter Velther received Zixandra's report in the crystal chambers beneath the Council station, his crystalline form resonating with frequencies that indicated deep concern. The Zethkar leader had spent centuries building the alliance between the 3 species, believing that their combined strength would be sufficient to contain human ambitions. Now he was beginning to understand that they had made a critical error. In their assessment of human capabilities, Admiral Steve Rodriguez sat in the command center of the human vessel Retribution, studying tactical displays that showed the current positions of all known Council fleets. Steve had commanded human naval forces for 20 years before the Exodus, and he understood better than most what humanity was capable of when pushed to extremes. The Retribution existed in a pocket of twisted space-time, invisible to normal sensors but capable of observing everything that happened in the regular universe. "Send the transmission," Steve ordered his communications officer. The message was brief and contained only coordinates and a timestamp set for exactly 1 week in the future. Steve knew that Council intelligence analysts would spend days trying to decode hidden meanings in the message, never realizing that its simplicity was the point. The coordinates pointed to Aquaticus Prime, homeworld of the Morden species. Dr. Rachel Stone worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the Council research vessel Deep Thought, analyzing quantum signatures that her team had collected from the sites of vanished human colonies. Rachel had collaborated with human scientists for decades before the Exodus, and she understood their theoretical frameworks better than any other alien researcher. What she was discovering in the data filled her with a terror that she struggled to comprehend. "They didn't just disappear," Rachel explained to the mixed species research team that surrounded her workstation. "The quantum signatures show that humanity transported themselves to a parallel dimension or pocket universe. From there, they can observe our reality while remaining completely undetectable. More importantly, they can reach back into our universe to attack specific targets while remaining absolutely safe from retaliation." The implications of Rachel's discovery sent shock waves through the Council leadership. Conventional military responses were useless against enemies who could strike from outside normal spacetime. The 3 species had spent millennia developing weapons and tactics, based on the assumption that their enemies would be bound by the same physical laws that governed their own existence. Captain Tony Blake led a joint Council expedition to investigate reports of strange energy readings in the disputed border regions between human and Vexi space. Tony had served as a liaison officer between the species for 8 years, and he had developed a grudging respect for human capabilities during that time. As his mixed crew approached the coordinates of the latest incident, Tony felt his hopes for a peaceful resolution fading with each passing hour. "Sir, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies ahead," reported his Zethkar navigator. The stellar cartography shows 12 planets in orbit around the primary star, but our sensors are only detecting 8 solid masses. Tony studied the readings with growing alarm. 4 worlds in the system had simply ceased to exist, leaving behind perfectly spherical voids in space where planets should have been orbiting. The remaining worlds showed signs of recent resource extraction on a scale that defied comprehension. Entire mountain ranges had been carved away, leaving behind geometric patterns that suggested the work of automated mining systems. Lieutenant Nina Ross intercepted encrypted transmissions between Council fleets as they attempted to coordinate a response to the growing crisis. The messages revealed the true scope of the disaster facing the 3 species. 17 major star systems had been completely harvested, their populations either dead or missing, their resources stripped away by human forces that remained invisible to conventional sensors. "They're not just seeking revenge," Nina reported to Lisa during their daily briefing. "The pattern of attack suggests they're gathering specific materials needed for megascale construction projects. Iron, nickel, rare earth elements, and massive quantities of hydrogen. If I didn't know better, I'd say they were building something the size of a star." Lisa studied the tactical displays that showed the current state of Council space. Red markers indicated systems that had been attacked or had vanished entirely, while yellow markers showed worlds that had been evacuated as their populations fled toward the core systems. The pattern was clear and methodical, suggesting that humanity was following a carefully planned strategy rather than lashing out in random anger. "How long do you think the Council can hold out?" Lisa asked her senior staff during their evening briefing. Dr. Chun looked up from her analysis of the latest attack data. "Based on the rate of resource extraction and the pattern of attacks, I estimate the Council has perhaps 6 months before their industrial capacity collapses completely. After that, they'll be dependent on whatever stockpiles they've managed to accumulate." Lisa nodded grimly as she considered the implications. Humanity had spent decades integrating themselves into the galactic economy, learning exactly which systems and resources were critical to maintaining alien civilization. Now they were systematically dismantling that infrastructure while building something enormous in their hidden dimension. The question that kept Lisa awake at night was simple. What were the humans building? And what did they plan to do with it once construction was complete? Captain Tony Blake stood on the observation deck of his vessel as they approached the coordinates that Admiral Rodriguez had provided to the Galactic Council. The journey to Aquaticus Prime had taken 4 days, and Tony had spent every hour of that time trying to prepare himself for what they might find. The oceanic homeworld of the Morden species had been home to 3 billion amphibious beings for over 5,000 years, their vast underwater cities powered by geothermal energy. From the planet's active core, what Tony saw as they dropped out of hyperspace defied every expectation he had formed during the long journey. Aquaticus Prime hung in space like a dried husk, its surface cracked and barren where endless oceans had once covered the world. The vast bodies of water that had given the planet its name were simply gone, leaving behind empty basins filled only with crystallized minerals that had once been dissolved in the seas. "Sensors are detecting no liquid water anywhere on the planetary surface," reported his Zethkar science officer, her crystalline voice resonating with frequencies that indicated profound shock. "The atmospheric moisture content is 0.03%, barely enough to register on our instruments. Whatever happened here removed every molecule of H2O from the entire world." Tony ordered his team to land near what had once been New Atlantis, the largest of the Morden underwater cities. The landing party wore environmental suits as they walked across the dried seabed, their boots crunching on formations that had once been coral reefs teeming with alien life. The city itself stood exposed to open air for the first time in its history, its bioluminescent architecture now dark and lifeless. Dr. Rachel Stone knelt beside what had once been a Morden citizen, her scanner analyzing the crystallized remains with scientific precision that barely concealed her horror. The amphibious being had been reduced to a mineral formation. Every drop of water extracted from its body through a process that had left its cellular structure perfectly preserved in crystal form. The extraction was instantaneous, Rachel reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was documenting. There's no evidence of suffering or decay. They were alive one moment and completely dehydrated the next. The implications of what they were seeing gradually became clear as the landing party explored more of the dried ocean floor. The Morden hadn't simply been killed. They had been harvested. Every drop of water that had once sustained their civilization had been transported elsewhere, likely to support human colonies in their hidden dimension. The attack hadn't been motivated by anger or revenge, but by cold calculation and resource requirements. Engineer Kate Sullivan analyzed the energy signatures that lingered around the planet's dried surface, her instruments detecting traces of the dimensional manipulation technology that humanity had used to accomplish this unprecedented act of environmental destruction. The power requirements for this operation would be enormous, Kate explained to Tony as they stood in what had once been the planet's deepest ocean trench. They would have needed infrastructure on dozens of worlds to generate enough energy to transport this volume of matter across dimensional barriers. High Arbiter Velther received the reports from Tony's expedition in his crystal chambers, his normally composed demeanor showing cracks of strain as he processed the full scope of human capabilities. The Zethkar leader had spent centuries building the Galactic Council on the assumption that cooperation and compromise could resolve any conflict between species. Now he was confronting an enemy that had moved beyond conventional diplomacy into a realm of power that made negotiation meaningless. "They're not seeking conquest," Velther communicated to the emergency council session through resonant frequencies that carried undertones of deep concern. Resource analysis indicates they are gathering materials for construction projects that dwarf anything attempted in galactic history. The water from Aquaticus Prime, combined with the minerals extracted from Vex-High industrial worlds, suggests they are building artificial habitats on a stellar scale. Captain Lisa Hayes monitored the Council's emergency broadcasts from her position in the Outer Rim, watching as panic spread through the alien civilizations like wildfire. The new frontier had become a mobile intelligence-gathering platform, collecting data on human activities while staying far from the main areas of conflict. Lisa felt the weight of her species' actions pressing down on her consciousness, knowing that she was witnessing the systematic destruction of entire civilizations. Commander Jake Morrison materialized aboard the Council station through what security cameras showed as spontaneous manifestation, his human form appearing in the main assembly chamber without triggering any of the station's advanced detection systems. Jake had served as humanity's diplomatic representative for 6 years before the Exodus, and the council members recognized his face even though they could barely comprehend how he had arrived. Jake stood before the assembled alien leadership, with eyes that held depths suggesting exposure to things beyond normal spacetime. His appearance had changed during his time in the hidden dimension, with subtle alterations to his bone structure and neural pathways that indicated adaptation to exotic physical laws. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated with frequencies outside the normal audible spectrum. "You have 7 days to evacuate all civilian populations from your core worlds," Jake announced, his words translated simultaneously into the communication methods of all 3 species. "Military forces and government officials will remain to face judgment for their crimes against humanity. Those who choose to resist will experience the same fate as the inhabitants of Aquaticus Prime." The ultimatum sent shock waves through the Council leadership, who had never imagined that humanity would be capable of such comprehensive dominance. Lieutenant Nina Ross intercepted desperate communications between the alien fleets as they attempted to coordinate a defense, their messages revealing the true scope of the disaster facing their civilizations. 17 major star systems have been completely harvested, Nina reported to Lisa during their daily briefing. Population estimates suggest that over 200 billion beings have been killed or transported to unknown locations. The Council's combined fleets are being recalled to defend the core worlds. But their own analysts admit that conventional weapons are useless against enemies who can attack from parallel dimensions. Dr. Amy Chain studied the reports from Tony's expedition to Aquaticus Prime, analyzing the precision and efficiency of the attack that had drained an entire world of water in minutes. This wasn't random destruction, Amy explained to the New Frontier's senior staff. The humans specifically targeted resources they needed while eliminating populations they considered threats. It's genocide disguised as resource extraction. The revelation that humanity's century of peaceful coexistence had actually been an elaborate intelligence-gathering operation became clear as more data emerged from the attacked worlds. Human diplomatic missions, trade delegations, and cultural exchange programs had systematically cataloged the weaknesses and strategic resources of every alien civilization. They had mapped supply lines, identified critical infrastructure, and assessed the defensive capabilities of their eventual enemies. Admiral Steve Rodriguez transmitted another message to the Council from his position in the hidden dimension, his words carrying the authority of a species that had transcended the normal limitations of space and time. "You taught us that might makes right," Steve's broadcast began, his image appearing simultaneously on every communication device in Council space. "You showed us that the strong survive by consuming the weak. We learned your lessons well." The transmission included tactical data showing that human forces had eliminated 60% of Council military assets without losing a single ship, their attackers remaining completely untouchable in their parallel dimension. The aliens were fighting an enemy that could strike anywhere while remaining absolutely safe from retaliation. A tactical situation that made conventional military doctrine obsolete. Dr. Rachel Stone worked desperately in her laboratory to find some weakness in human dimensional technology, analyzing quantum signatures from dozens of attack sites in search of patterns that might reveal vulnerabilities. Her research had revealed that humanity was operating from a pocket universe with different physical laws, allowing them to manipulate matter and energy in ways that were impossible in normal spacetime. "They've become something beyond what they were when they left," Rachel reported to the Council's Emergency Science Committee. "The modifications to their physiology and technology suggest adaptation to exotic conditions that have enhanced their capabilities far beyond anything we considered possible. We're not fighting the humans who disappeared 6 months ago. We're fighting what they became during their time in the hidden dimension." Captain Tony Blake led the remnants of his expedition fleet toward the Council's core systems, carrying data that painted a picture of human capabilities that defied comprehension. The evidence suggested that humanity had been preparing for this war for over a century, developing technology and strategies that would ensure their complete victory while minimizing their own casualties. They had learned from the Council's own history of conquest. The 7-day ultimatum expired at exactly 1433 Galactic Standard Time, the same moment that humanity had vanished from known space nearly a year earlier. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the New Frontier, watching long-range sensors track the massive Vex-High industrial world of Manufactory Prime as it completed another routine orbit around its red giant star. The planet housed over 4 billion insectoid workers who had spent centuries building the manufacturing infrastructure that supported the Vex-High war machine. Lisa blinked, and Manufactory Prime was gone. Not destroyed, not reduced to debris, but simply absent from space as if it had never existed. Long-range sensors showed a perfect sphere of empty vacuum where the planet had been orbiting moments before, its gravitational influence on nearby asteroids still detectable even though the world itself had ceased to exist. "Captain, I'm reading similar voids appearing throughout Vex-High territory," Lieutenant Nina Ross reported from her communications station, her voice tight with the strain of documenting the impossible. 12 industrial worlds have been erased in the past 30 minutes. The Vex-High Fleet Command is reporting that they can't even detect where their planets went. It's like reality itself forgot they ever existed. Dr. Amy Chun worked frantically at her science station, analyzing the quantum signatures left behind by the vanished worlds. The data defied every model of physics that galactic science had developed over millennia of research. The erasure is happening at the quantum level, Amy explained, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed readings beyond her instrument's ability to properly measure. It's not destruction in any conventional sense. The planets are being edited out of existence, removed from the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Engineer Kate Sullivan studied the energy patterns associated with the erasures, her engineering background allowing her to recognize the industrial precision of what humanity was accomplishing. "They're not using brute force," Kate observed, her voice filled with professional admiration despite the horror of what she was witnessing. "This is surgical modification of reality, requiring complete understanding of quantum mechanics at levels we've never achieved. They've weaponized the universe itself." The technology appeared to be based on principles that made existence itself complicit in humanity's revenge. Rather than applying external force to destroy their targets, the humans had found ways to convince reality that certain objects had never existed in the first place. The effect was retroactive, erasing not just the present state of the target worlds but their entire history from the quantum foundation of space-time. Admiral Steve Rodriguez broadcast another message from his position in the hidden dimension, his image appearing on emergency channels throughout Council space as alien civilizations watched their worlds vanish one by one. Steve's appearance had continued to evolve during his time outside normal space-time, his human features now showing subtle modifications that suggested adaptation to environments where different physical laws applied. "You created the conditions that made this necessary," Steve announced, his words carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond normal perception. "For centuries, you demonstrated that peaceful coexistence was impossible. Your species viewed diplomacy as weakness and compromise as surrender. We spent decades modeling every possible outcome, and in 97.3% of scenarios, you eventually united to eliminate humanity entirely." The transmission included detailed historical analysis showing how the three council species had consistently chosen aggression over cooperation throughout their expansion across the galaxy. Their own records documented thousands of wars of extermination against smaller species, justified by claims of resource scarcity and territorial necessity. Humanity had studied these patterns and concluded that the council species were fundamentally incapable of accepting equals. Dr. Rachel Stone received permission to examine one of the erasure sites directly, leading a research team to the coordinates, where Manufactory Prime had existed hours earlier. The space showed no residual radiation, no debris field, no gravitational anomalies. Even the cosmic background radiation appeared undisturbed, as if 4 billion years of planetary formation and evolution had simply been removed from the historical record. "The precision is terrifying," Rachel reported as her team's instruments failed to detect any trace of the vanished world. "They've managed to delete specific objects from reality while leaving the surrounding space completely unaffected. The star that Manufactory Prime orbited doesn't even show signs of gravitational disturbance. It's as if the planet never existed, but everything else remains exactly as it was." Commander Jake Morrison appeared aboard the Council's main command vessel. Through the same dimensional manipulation technology that allowed human forces to strike from their hidden realm, Jake's modifications had become more pronounced during his time outside normal space. His neural pathways now capable of processing information from multiple dimensions simultaneously. When he spoke to the assembled alien commanders, his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Negotiation ended when you chose sanctions over diplomacy," Jake explained, his enhanced consciousness allowing him to communicate in frequencies that bypassed normal translation barriers. "We modeled every possible peaceful solution and found that your species would never accept human equality. This war isn't revenge. It's a surgical procedure to remove an existential threat to human survival." The alien commanders struggled to comprehend the scope of human preparation that Jake's words revealed. Humanity had spent over a century analyzing every aspect of galactic civilization, using their positions as traders, diplomats, and researchers to map the vulnerabilities of their eventual enemies. They had identified critical worlds, strategic resources, and psychological pressure points with scientific precision. Captain Tony Blake led what remained of the Council's mobile fleet in a desperate attempt to locate the source of human attacks, hoping to find some vulnerability in their dimensional manipulation technology. Tony's mixed-species crew had been reduced to a fraction of its original size as alien worlds vanished and their personnel were recalled to defend their homeworlds. The humans aboard his ship worked alongside their alien colleagues with grim determination, knowing that they were fighting against their own species. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures consistent with dimensional breach protocols," reported the ship's Zethkar science officer. "The readings suggest that human forces are preparing for a major operation against the Zethkar homeworld system. Based on the power levels we're measuring, they intend to erase all 12 planets simultaneously." Tony felt his heart sink as he realized the implications of what his science officer was reporting. The Zethkar homeworld system contained the entire governmental and cultural infrastructure of the crystalline species, along with nearly 40 billion civilians who had no involvement in the political decisions that had led to this war. If humanity succeeded in erasing the entire system, the Zethkar would cease to exist as a coherent civilization. Lieutenant Nina Ross intercepted increasingly desperate communications from the remaining Council forces as they attempted to evacuate civilian populations from the core worlds. The logistics of moving billions of beings across interstellar distances in a matter of days proved impossible, leaving most alien civilians trapped on worlds that were scheduled for erasure. The panic in their transmissions revealed species that had never imagined facing an enemy capable of such overwhelming technological superiority. "The Morden government has officially surrendered," Nina reported during an emergency briefing. "They're requesting permission to evacuate their surviving populations to designated refugee worlds under human supervision. The Vexi hive mothers are still attempting to coordinate resistance, but their industrial capacity has been reduced to less than 5% of pre-war levels." Dr. Amy Chen analyzed the quantum signatures associated with the impending attack on the Zethkar homeworld system, her instruments detecting energy buildups that dwarfed anything they had previously recorded. The power requirements for simultaneously erasing 12 planets suggest that humanity has constructed stellar-scale infrastructure in their hidden dimension, Amy reported, her voice reflecting the awe and terror of her discoveries. "They're not just using advanced technology. They've become something fundamentally different from the species that left our reality a year ago." The systematic elimination of alien civilization continued with mechanical precision as human forces worked through their target lists with ruthless efficiency. Each erasure was perfectly executed, removing entire worlds from existence while leaving no trace of their former presence. The message was clear to any surviving alien observers. Resistance was not just futile, but literally impossible against enemies who had transcended the normal limitations of physical reality. Engineer Kate Sullivan studied the patterns of human attacks, noting the careful selection of targets that would maximize psychological impact while preserving specific resources that humanity apparently needed for their own purposes. "They're not destroying everything randomly," Kate observed. During a strategy meeting with Lisa's senior staff, 6 months after the systematic erasure of the Zethkar homeworld system, Dr. Rachel Stone stood in the observation lounge of one of the last surviving Council vessels, documenting the aftermath of humanity's complete victory. The three species that had once commanded a galactic empire spanning thousands of star systems and numbering in the trillions had been reduced to scattered populations totaling less than 50 million survivors. The speed and efficiency of their defeat defied comprehension. Rachel's research had revealed the true scope of what humanity had accomplished during their time in the hidden dimension. They hadn't simply developed new weapons or defensive technologies. They had evolved into something that transcended the normal limitations of three-dimensional existence. Their consciousness could process information from multiple dimensional layers simultaneously, allowing them to perceive and manipulate reality in ways that made conventional physics obsolete. Captain Lisa Hayes received an unprecedented communication from New Geneva Station, humanity's first permanent installation to reappear in normal space since their exodus 18 months earlier. The message contained coordinates and an invitation for surviving humans to dock at the station, along with detailed safety protocols that suggested humanity was finally ready to re-establish contact with their own scattered population. The journey to New Geneva Station took the new frontier through regions of space that had been fundamentally altered by human dimensional manipulation. Lisa observed stellar phenomena that hadn't existed before the war. Perfectly geometric formations of asteroids arranged in patterns that served no apparent purpose except to demonstrate humanity's ability to reshape matter on astronomical scales. The message was clear to any observer with the knowledge to interpret it. As the new frontier approached the station, Lisa marveled at the engineering achievement that humanity had constructed in such a short time. New Geneva Station was a technological marvel that incorporated principles of dimensional architecture, existing simultaneously in normal space and the hidden realm where humanity had spent their exile. The structure seemed to shift and flow as it moved between dimensional states, defying conventional understanding of solid matter. Commander Jake Morrison greeted Lisa's crew at the station's docking bay, his appearance now showing the full extent of his adaptation to multidimensional existence. His eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes, and when he moved, subtle distortions in the air around him suggested that his physical form existed in more than 3 dimensions simultaneously. Jake had become humanity's primary ambassador to the surviving alien populations, a role that required him to bridge the gap between normal reality and the transcendent state that his species had achieved. "Welcome to the new reality," Jake said as he guided Lisa through corridors that seemed to extend far beyond what the station's external dimensions should have allowed. "We've spent the past year establishing the infrastructure needed to maintain galactic stability while ensuring that the mistakes of the past can never be repeated." Lisa walked alongside Jake, observing human crew members who had undergone various degrees of dimensional enhancement. Some showed subtle modifications similar to Jake's, while others appeared almost unchanged from their pre-Exodus state. "How many of us survived the transition?" Lisa asked, referring to the mysterious process that had transported humanity to their hidden dimension. "All of us," Jake replied, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated with frequencies beyond normal human hearing. The evacuation was complete and successful. No human lives were lost during the Exodus, though many chose to undergo enhancement procedures that have changed us in fundamental ways. "We are still human, but we have become something more than what we were." Dr. Amy Chin was granted access to human archives documenting the Great Calculation, a comprehensive analysis project that had consumed centuries of human intellectual effort. The databanks contained detailed models of every possible timeline and outcome involving human-council coexistence, analyzed with computational power that drew on the exotic physics of the hidden dimension. The mathematics were unforgiving, Amy learned as she studied the archived reports. In 97.3% of scenarios, the 3 council species eventually united to eliminate humanity entirely. The remaining 2.7% required human technological supremacy, so overwhelming that the alien species couldn't conceive of resistance. There was no middle path that allowed for genuine coexistence between equals. Engineer Kate Sullivan explored the station's technical infrastructure, marveling at the integration of dimensional manipulation technology with conventional engineering. The humans had learned to draw power directly from the quantum vacuum, manipulate matter at the subatomic level, and create spaces that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The technological advancement achieved during their 18-month exile represented millennia of normal scientific progress compressed into an impossibly short time frame. "We didn't become monsters to win this war," Admiral Steve Rodriguez explained during a briefing session with the surviving human crews who had been scattered across the galaxy during the Exodus. We realized that we had always been monsters, just like every other successful species in galactic history. The Council's mistake was forgetting that the most dangerous predator is one that has learned patience and planning. Steve's words carried the weight of absolute authority as he outlined humanity's new role in galactic affairs. The war hadn't been fought for conquest or revenge, but to establish a sustainable equilibrium that would prevent future conflicts. The complete elimination of the 3 Council species had been the only solution that guaranteed long-term human security while removing the threat of future genocide attempts against humanity. Lieutenant Nina Ross was assigned to the Humanitarian Relief Corps, a new human organization dedicated to managing the surviving alien populations. The Corps operated under strict protocols, designed to preserve the cultural identity of the refugee species while ensuring they could never again pose a threat to human civilization. The surviving aliens would be relocated to carefully selected worlds under human protection and guidance. The preservation protocols ensure that Vex-High Zethkar and modern cultures will survive in controlled environments. Nina explained to Lisa during a tour of the refugee processing facilities. Their populations are too small to maintain technological civilization, but they can preserve their traditions, languages, and social structures under human supervision. It's not the existence they once knew, but its existence nonetheless. Captain Tony Blake found himself in the unique position of serving as a liaison between the human administration and the surviving alien populations. His years of experience working with the Council species made him invaluable in helping the refugees adapt to their new circumstances. Tony had witnessed the complete transformation of galactic civilization and understood better than most how thoroughly humanity had won their war. The survivors are gradually accepting their new reality, Tony reported during weekly briefings. With the human leadership, the older generations still struggle with the magnitude of their defeat, but the younger aliens are adapting to life under human guidance. Within a generation, most will have no memory of independent alien civilization. Dr. Rachel Stone was appointed to lead the Historical Documentation Project, an effort to preserve accurate records of the war and its aftermath for future generations. Rachel's unique perspective as an alien scientist who had worked closely with humans before the Exodus made her ideally suited to document the transition from the old galactic order to humanity's new empire. The irony is profound, Rachel wrote in her final report. The Council species spent centuries conquering and eliminating smaller civilizations, justifying their actions as necessary for galactic stability. They never imagined that a species would emerge with the capability to apply their own logic against them with such devastating effectiveness. The establishment of the new galactic order proceeded with the same methodical precision that had characterized humanity's military campaign. Human administrators took control of the surviving infrastructure, implementing systems designed to prevent the emergence of future threats while maintaining the technological foundation needed to support galactic civilization. The refugees were integrated into carefully planned communities where they could maintain their cultural identities while contributing to human society. Years passed as the new equilibrium stabilized across the galaxy. Human colonies emerged from their hidden dimension to reclaim the star systems that had once been disputed territory, while the surviving alien populations adapted to their roles as protected minorities under human guidance. The children of the refugees grew up in a universe where human benevolence was the natural order. Unaware of the war that had made their existence possible, Lisa Hayes eventually accepted a position as director of the Galactic Stability Commission, overseeing the long-term administration of humanity's new empire. Her experiences during the war had given her unique insights into the challenges of managing a multi-species civilization while preventing the emergence of new threats to human security. The humans who had lived through the Exodus carried